are days. I don't know if you have days like that, but this is one of those days. So, welcome everyone. I'm Lisa Presley. I am your host for this series of Extended Leadership School, and I'm really glad to see you all here today. We're joined once again by Reverend Connie Simon, who will be doing our history presentation, and by my colleague, the Reverend Phil Lund, who will be talking with me in the second part of today's session on mission and vision. And so with that, I'm glad to see you all here. Um, and here we go. Come on, slides advance. There we go, the famous welcome slide. I think we all know this, that the Zoom messages and stuff. I have to get rid of that little notice up there. There we go. That we are mute when we don't talk, when people are sharing screen. If you want to see the people as well as the uh, the the slides without that. You choose the view up above on the top of your window and side by side. You choose speaker view if you want to highlight the person who is speaking. You choose gallery view to see everyone's lovely faces, at least those who are have their video on. And some people have their video off for very good reasons, and that's perfectly fine. I want to remind you of our covenant going forward with this program. I did not receive any comments from anyone as to any changes or additions they wanted to it. And so therefore, I am hoping that this is fine. And, um, and I'm sorry about those pop-up windows. They keep on covering part of the slide. I've never figured out how to get that not to happen. So our covenant for our time together is that we pledge as Unitarian Universalists to strive for equity, justice, and compassion in all our interactions. We seek to center the voices of those who have been historically marginalized, and we commit ourselves to finding ways we can deeply care for one another today and throughout these challenging times. All right. If you advance a slide on the wrong computer, it will not go forward. I just want to let you know that. And for some reason, these controls, even though I tell them hide, they keep on popping back. Okay. So our agreements is as we mutually create virtual spaces of bravery and well-being for all, let us remember to listen with patience and respect, seeking to understand while living with the tension that time and technology might not allow you to directly address misunderstandings. Please mute when not speaking, although many of our sessions we might be using the all mute button. And please use the chat option when it's available with care and thoughtful regard for others. Jen, I see your sound isn't working. Can others hear me okay? All right, so I think it's on your end, Jenna. I'm hoping that you could maybe use the audio controls and test your speakers, and you will also be able to hear it, much of it that way, or you might want to actually come back in, and that might be you coming back in. I'm not sure. Okay. And then our safety guidelines. Individuals who engage in personal attacks, insults, or racist, sexist, or violent words and imagery will be removed from the meeting. In order to rejoin the session, you get to have a conversation with me, and that's fine. We like each other. We can figure things out. We know that that we can do this. And I'm going to have to figure out a different tech solution for next week. I was solving one tech issue by using a second computer today, and that's not working. It's not doing what I want. So for all of that, um, it will be fine. Oh, that's really smart. Jana is reading the captions in case she can't get it figured out. What a smart move. I love people who figure things out. Okay, so we're going to now begin with our worship moment. And so let's settle in and take a breath or two as we begin. And I think that reminder is for me, perhaps more than anyone else. Our opening words today are by the Reverend Julian Jamaica Soto from book Spilling the Light. It's one of the meditation manuals that we have here in the UUA. And this one is called Finding Our Dreams. Reverend Soto begins with a quote from Georgia O'Keeffe. We haven't found enough dreams. We haven't dreamed enough. The world makes many demands on your time, your skin, your heart, until you are left gasping and wondering if you will ever do enough, have enough, be enough. Stop your counting, measuring, and checking. You are enough. So much more than enough, made from fragments of the galaxy. You do measure up. And to recover from the doubt pressed upon you, the antidote for doubt is dreaming. All the dreams that call to you, lime green and frosting pink dreams, the other soft and tender dreams that run blue to gray, sky indistinguishable from lulling sea, the dreams that seem impossible. Listen, that's their nature. If they had already happened, then they would be realities, solid and smooth, like the round bone home of an unbroken egg. Be brave enough to name your dream, nurture it, and allow the rhythm of your breath to bring your dreams to life. If you have a chalice near you, I encourage you to light it to begin our time together. I have this little flame here that I'm now going to put in its holder. And I have my chalice here. Dreams. What are the dreams you have? The dreams of your congregation? How have dreams kept you alive even when they've disappointed you? Dreams are what we have to keep hope alive, that we will not always be living in hard times, that we will not always be living in fear, that we will not always worry for ourselves, our loved ones, our communities, our world. The dreams that seem impossible, listen, that's their nature. A dear friend who was a psychologist specialized in differentiating grief from depression, stating that one key ingredient to differentiate and distinguish between the two was the place of hope. If we could locate our hope, or in harder times, if we could allow someone else to hold the hope for us, what we were most likely experiencing was grief, not depression. Depression was the land where hope could not be found or could not be held for us by anyone, ourselves included. We who commit to religious community are the holders of hope, whether we know it or not. We hold alive the promise that there is something different that we can do, accomplish, something different that beckons us forward into the world of possibilities. We are not content alone with the realities that have already happened, with the round bone home of an unbroken egg. For us, we want the flights into the possible, the unknown, the belief that things can be different, and that we, singly and apart, have a place in the unfolding of a different future. That's the locus of mission and vision. What it is that we dream will be, what is it that we are called to be part of it, to make a true difference in the world, to transform not only for ourselves alone, but for those among us, all those among us, and those who are part of the family of human beings and non human beings. Be brave enough to name your dream, nurture it, and allow the rhythm of your breath to bring your dreams to life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Oops. And to end this time of worship together, I read this again by Reverend Soto and Taraxacum. Even though they are edible, someone decided that dandelions are weeds, stragglers to destroy, to uproot. But dandelions never got the memo, never thought to care. Busy instead with dropping roots, flinging seeds, unfurling shoots. And persistent in digging in that taproot to depths of 2 or 3 average adults to end, the tiny yellow flower survives. You are no less resilient, reaching both down to the strength that holds you and up to the light, or out with your beauty. And you know, having sunk your effort into the cool, damp earth, that while dandelions can be clipped and fought, uninvested in anyone's opinion, they throw their sparkling futures onto the wind, tomorrow tucked into seeds, and grow all the way back, strong and bowing at the very same time. So, with that, we are now moving on. Welcome back. I always wonder, phew, do our brains have any more room after we hear Connie and all that stuff and all the questions that are happening? So I'm glad that you're sticking around, and that we're going to progress. I'd like to let my co-presenter Phil just say hello and introduce himself. And some of you, I guess I didn't really introduce myself well at the beginning of this session. I'm Lisa Presley. I'm one of your congregational life consultants here in the Mid-America region. One of the things we try to do is to also give a visual description for those who might have vision impairment issues. And so I am an older white woman with gray hair that looks maybe a little even brownish. I am wearing a rust or orange colored shirt with a black fleece, and I have a UUA modeled background behind me. Phil, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a bit about who you are?
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, I'm Phil Lund. I am, like Lisa, Congregation Life Consultant from the Mid-America region. I'm in my mid-60s with a white beard and a very receding hairline. I'm wearing glasses. I've got a dark blue shirt on, and I'm kind of behind a pale background. Um, yeah, I work in Mid-America. We divide up our congregations that we as congregational life consultants are primary contacts for. We divide them up by size. So I work primarily with congregations of around a hundred or so or less. I've been doing that for a few years. Um, and that has a little bearing on what we're going to be talking about too, but that comes up a little later. But I've been doing this for about 22 years now, working for the UUA, the former Prairie Star District, and now the Mid-America region. And I really enjoy it. So it's good to be here. We did this a few years ago. Last time we did the extended leadership experience. I joined Lisa to talk about mission and vision then, and so I'm back to do it again today. So good to be here.
And I'm glad you are. And I work primarily with congregations in the 100 to 200 member range. And then our other colleagues work with the larger congregations than this. All right, so here we go. Let's see if I can get these slides to advance. There we go. The first thing I really want to just bring up is why do we even bother talking about mission and vision? And in Connie, she was talking about how we identify and all of that kind of thing. And we had the conversation about, how are we not Christian or how are we Christian as part of that conversation. But for me, a lot of this comes down to the whole, this quote I have or statement I have on the top of the slide, which is if we don't know where we're going, any road will take us there. And so, in order for our congregations to really know who they are and identify themselves and figure out who they are, they need to figure out why do they bother to exist. There's a need for clarity for decision making. What is the yardstick we're measuring against? And how do we know where to spend our time, our energy, our money, and all of that? And then building on last week's session where we talked about the question of who do we mean, it's that question we're still always asking throughout this program, which is who is included, who is not. Some exclusion might be necessary. We don't want people who work and operate in ways that are counter to our values. And so we need some definition and some limits, but we need to know really why do we bother to exist? Bill, take it away.
So there are some kind of various definitions of mission and vision, and in this case, covenant too. And we're going to start with this, and we're maybe going to refine them a little bit as we talk a bit more. And I'd just like to say, Connie mentioned it's good to revisit our statement of purpose and being from time to time. She was talking about the whole UUA, but your vision, your mission, your covenant, those are kind of your statements of purpose and being for your particular congregation. So it's good to revisit them from time to time. And when we are talking about vision, mission, and covenant, what are we talking about? Well, you can read this, but I will narrate it for you. So a vision is a carefully defined picture of where you want to be in the future, like 5 years or more. And it is a dream of what you can become. So it is aspirational. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that works later. A mission is a concise statement of what you want to be known for or known as within the wider world, what you want to mean to the community. And this here is why I do think mission and vision statements are essential, because this is working on how you want to be seen by your larger community. This is you, finding the language you want to use as a congregation when you collectively and individually tell people who you are. But again, it's a concise statement. It's something that it's easy to remember, easy to put on your website, easy to put on your bulletin, just to keep it in front of folks. So it needs to be concise. And then we're going to talk about a covenant statement here, but then we're also going to be talking about value statements as well. And it's kind of a whole package, and how you actually put it together in your congregations depends on your congregations. But a covenant is a statement of how your members will be with and will behave toward one another, as well as what is promised or vowed to one another and to the congregation as a whole. And we'll find out in a minute why we're talking about covenant here. And we're also going to be talking about vision or values as well. So, but I believe, Lisa, we got this from that book on vision, mission, covenant from the UUA. And there's the next slide. And this is the explanation of why we're talking about values and covenant. So as you can see, they have these as kind of concentric rounded, I don't know how, squares and rectangles that are kind of rounded off at the edges. But you have your vision, your dream is the largest kind of statement that you have, because it's talking about who you imagine you will be and what effect you will have on the world in the future, in your community. The mission is the next layer. It's who we are and why we exist. And then the next, what I think is the very center of this is what they put together as values and covenant. And that's why we talked about the covenant statement as well. They kind of go together because they're based on what we hold dear. And I think part of this, the way this works is what we hold dear should be influencing how we treat each other. And it should be influencing what our mission and our vision is too. What are the things we hold dear? What does that say about how we treat each other? What does it say about who we are and why we exist? And what does it say about our dream? That's why I think the values are so important. So I would kind of separate out a value statement from a covenant. But I do think these work, all of these things, the vision, the mission, the covenant, they're all kind of grow out of clarifying those values, what we hold dear in our congregations. And then they show that how a vision and a mission can help the congregation develop their shared goals within the congregation, the ministry they're going to be doing together, and also their objectives, what they're going to be doing in the community. And these can become very specific and measurable strategies. But again, they're based on all this work that you do around the mission and the vision and the values. Okay, Lisa? So, as you may know, we've had a shift on the national level, the UUA associational level, moving away from talking about principles and purposes, which, by the way, still exist and are fully available to every congregation to use as they see fit. But we've also now have this language of values that the UUA has, whether it was voted on at General Assembly. And they are now part of the UUA bylaws. And they talk about the values being centered on love. And I think this is helpful for us when we think about our congregation's values, is to have something to go on, And by the way, the principles can also be turned into a statement that is more of a value statement than principle statement as well. So you can do this kind of work either way, with with the Article 2 revisions and our value statements, but you can also do them with the principles and purposes, including the eighth principle, and finding language to talk about those as values too. So I think it's good to start a conversation in a congregation. Uh, as I said, Connie mentioned revisiting our statement of purpose and being. When you're having a conversation about that, to look at the values that we share collectively as an association, or look at the principles as values, and to kind of see which ones resonate with your religious community. So some religious communities might be really into justice work. Some might be really into interfaith work. Some might be really into giving and generosity to the wider community. What does it feel like? Which of these kind of feel like um, they resonate with your congregation? And as I said, this is kind of a start to do this. You don't want to just take somebody else's values and say, okay, we'll use those. You want to have a conversation about them. And to me, that's one of the best things about doing mission, vision, values, covenant work, is it makes room to have a congregation-wide conversation. So, and I mentioned about how we can. Well, here are the specifics of the Article 2, and I think it's worth taking a look at some of these too, because some of that language from the 7 principles are still in here. So we have the interdependent web. Once again, we have the multicultural beloved communities, which is actually in the 8th principle, if you've adopted that. We have the language about being inherently worthy and dignity in there as well. So taking those values in Article 2 and looking at the full value statement gives us even more language to work with as we think about developing mission, vision, values, covenant for our congregations.
And one of the things, just let me add in here, and I'm sure Phil does this as well, but I often, when I'm talking with boards, when they're faced with a really sticky decision, really tricky, how are we going to negotiate this? I often tell them, go back to what your values are. List which values are there, and then talk about, in this situation, are there any of these values that are competing? And if so, then which are the ones you are going to elevate in this moment? This often happens. Are we looking at the individual, or are we looking at the communal, or things like that? And so knowing and really working on the values part helps you figure out then more with the decision making. We also just wanted to talk a bit more about that 8th principle, and you'll see midway through here, it so the history of the 8th principle was that that there was nowhere in our principles that really talked concretely about wanting to become anti-racist and multicultural and anti-oppressive. And so Paula Cole Jones, who is a Unitarian Universalist, well renowned in our movement, decided to look at an 8th principle that would intentionally do this. Well, because of, and you'll find this probably in your bylaws, there were restrictions on whether or not we could simply add an 8th principle to Article 2, or it had to be wholly revised or reviewed. It turned out that many congregations adopted the 8th principle, but it couldn't be adopted on the UUA because it ran afoul of the bylaw amendment process and the need to review all of that Article 2 section. And so this is, for some congregations where it was gaining momentum, many congregations did pass and adopt the 8th principle. People then said, well, what's going to happen to that? Paula Cole Jones was on that Article 2 committee, and you can see the echo of it in all of the parts of Article 2. one of the things I'm also, when I talk with congregations, I say, what's your mission? And they will pull out a lovely statement with lots of great values and lots of ways of thinking about the world and how they view the world. And it has values sometimes embedded in it. I like to differentiate between a mission and a mission statement. The mission is, what are you actually working on? What are you actually dealing with in your congregation? What is your priority? How are you transforming your internal community? How and your wider community? And I love to tell this story, and I might, I'll probably reference it later today too. But Glenn Thomas Rideout, who is one of our musicians in the movement, when Black Lives Matter came out, Glenn Thomas is an African American. He has a doctorate in music from University of Michigan, and he was part of the Ann Arbor congregation for a number of years. And so when the Black Lives Matter movement began, Glenn Thomas preached a sermon on Do Black Lives Matter. He shocked the good liberals in the Ann Arbor congregation who thought that Ann Arbor was a special place in the universe. And it is in some ways, but it's also in other ways. When he mentioned that he'd only been called the N word 3 times that year walking through the streets rather than more times that he had been done before. And as you can imagine, as he went on, Glenn Thomas said, of course, Black Lives Matter. But the real question is, do we matter to Black lives? If we were to disappear tomorrow, who would notice? Would Black lives, would Black people in our community know that we weren't there anymore? And so for me, that just flipped everything for me as far as Black Lives Matter and other things. And it made me come to talk about mission as the question of, who do you want to miss you if you cease to exist? Clearly, it's the people in your congregation, of course, but then the question is, who beyond that do you want to know? Who do you want? What difference do you really want to make in your community? We're going to give you a chance in a while to talk with each other about that. I also want to talk about another thing I do, which is the shadow mission. That for many of us, we might have a personal mission statement, a congregational mission statement, a life mission statement, whatever. But then there will also be other things that are pulling us away from that. Um, so and it's more about, where are we actually spending our time and our energy and our focus. It's sort of like when I don't know if you've ever done a checkbook audit, or now it might be an ATM statement audit or whatever. But where you say, here's where I want to be spending my money. And then you actually go down through your financial records and figure out, where are you spending the money? Oh, I'm not spending it on this, but I am spending it on that, even though the first thing is really what I want to be about. And so it's the same thing with your mission. What is the shadow mission that's pulling your time and attention? For many congregations with older buildings, the building itself pulls away the energy from what else, because it needs so much attention. But there might be other things. It's sort of, what do you fight about in the congregation? Is that a shadow mission or something that's keeping you from your greater mission? So it's always an interesting thing to ask people what they believe their shadow mission is. And so, again, that question of, who would miss you in your community if you were to disappear? It might not be your mission that your people where your mission is designed for. It could be something totally else. Phil, you're muted, friend.
Yep, got it. Thank you. So one of the things, like, one of the things I really like about doing this work is it does give you the opportunity in your congregation to set up whatever you want to call them, listening circles, uh, cottage meetings. I don't know. We have a lot of different ways of talking, but it gives you a chance to set these opportunities up for people to talk about what's important for them in the congregation and opportunities to listen. And there's a group called Essential Partners that Lisa and I got a presentation from years ago at one of our meetings in Boston. Um, and it's a group that really their purpose is to bring people together to have conversations, oftentimes around difficult issues. And I don't know, maybe in your congregation you've had those uh, uh, difficult all those times where you might have some difficult conversations. And the important thing is that you structure them somehow. And so they talk about having a structured conversation. So one of the first things they do is have some agreements that you can always pass or pass for now. That's a basic one. You give people the opportunity to pass once, and then after it's gone around to everyone, they have an opportunity to say something at that point. So you can always pass or pass from now. You respect time limits. So we're going to break you into groups, Lisa, right? And then we're going to have some time that you will use to talk with one another. And that'll just mean each of you will have so many minutes that you can speak. So respect the time limits. That we speak one at a time and share the airspace. And then that this is a general sort of thing that things will be confidential. The learning goes with you, but the stories stay there in the group. And that you speak for yourself and not on behalf for others. And I don't know if you've ever run across this at a conversation in a congregation, but sometimes people will talk about what other people think without saying who they are. You know, people are saying this or whatever. You should really keep to speaking for yourself. So here's the way these structured go rounds work. One person will read the question out loud, and then we each take 2 minutes. The whole group takes 2 minutes to reflect on the question and prepare to speak. And then the first person speaks for 2 minutes, and then each person follows going clockwise. Now, we don't have a clockwise sort of thing to do here. So find some way to kind of set your group up. How many people are we going to have in groups, Lisa?
We're going to have 3 or 4. So you might find the timing is this 2 minutes might not quite work.
But we'll adjust them. Yeah. So what I would suggest is you just go in alphabetical order by your first name or reverse alphabetical order, whatever works for you. But just find some way to put yourself in an order. If we were sitting in a circle, of course, we'd be in order. But so you go around. You can always pass or pass for now without explanation. There's a brief pause between speakers, so what has been spoken can be fully heard and absorbed. If we were together, we would be passing a timer along that would indicate when the end of the 2 minutes is. So just kind of track that for yourselves. And then as you listen, you can take notes about things you'd like to learn more about. And if there's enough time, you can have the opportunity to ask questions of each other. So that's kind of the basic structure for these dialogues. And I like the simplicity of this format, and I think it's one that you can take to your congregations. And if you do start the mission, vision, values work, to have the dialogue around what matters most to each other in your congregation about being part of that congregation. What are the really meaningful things about being a member of whatever congregation you're in? So, Lisa, are we going to set them up now for the questions? Yes.
I needed to unmute myself this time. One of the things that we often suggest is you might want to spend a couple minutes thinking before you begin the speaking. Some of us need a bit of silence before that. I also want to make clear that a shadow mission is not necessarily bad. It's just a mission other than the one you've articulated. And it may be the mission that you choose once you recognize it's hidden in the shadows. You might say, yes, that really is what we're about. Wasn't clear about that. So you'll see here there are some suggested questions. I'm also putting them in the chat, so they should survive with you. What is my congregation's mission and is it explicit? What is my congregation's shadow mission and how does it impact us? So I'll do that and I will open the rooms and you'll have 20 minutes. Here we go. Oh, every now and then I'm just so clever. I remembered to turn the recording back on. Um, so because we want to put you in another small group, we're not going to take a lot of conversation right now. But what I would love is for you to type in the chat um, what your, what your vision or mission is. You can choose as a congregation, and what your shadow mission is. So make sure to say, one of them's a shadow mission, and we'll read a few of them out. And I think I, taught you last time, but I can tell again about how you can save the chat so that you can read other congregations. Is that either at the top or the bottom of your chat window, there are three dots, and that if you click on that, it'll allow you to save it. So, okay, let's see. And one of the things is when you try to, like advance and make a paragraph, it always kicks your first message out. If you hold shift while you're putting enter, I think that allows you to keep it in a block in one message, but who knows? So, all right, let's see. Okay, now they're flooding in. With the spirit of wonder and courageous love, we connect, grow, and act. And then another connect, act, and grow. We seek to create a vibrant, inclusive faith community. We envision a place of sanctuary and spiritual growth. Together, we aspire to build a just and compassionate world. And then the shadow mission to that is to support progressive social justice activism, working to move opinions toward a liberated future and lift up the oppressed. That's a pretty cool shadow mission. And then our mission is to be authentic, compassionate, transformative in our lives and our faith in the world. The shadow mission is growth, that you're trying to grow or that you feel you need to grow. I think that was Ashley who said that. Is it that you have to grow? Is that or you are growing?
That we want to grow, and everything that we do should be moving toward that goal of growth.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the interesting things about growth is because you can't make people join you, and so then the question is, it often is how clearly you define yourself that does it. So, yeah, there's another Kate says grow the shadow is grow the church and grow the budget. Welcoming spiritually diverse community to support members' spiritual needs and a beacon to the community. These are all great. I'm not going to read them all because we want to get you back in another group shortly. But I love these, and I encourage you to save them to see and compare them to the whole groups to your own. So then let me I got to come back over here to share the slides. I'm going to figure out a better way next time. I've already sent the email saying, hey, can you help me with this? And I'm going to hide that. Oh, come on. Hide the panel and then start the slideshow again. Okay. And so this one is, question about how did the pandemic or the most active phase so far of the endemic impact you? Is your mission the same or did it change? How has living out the mission been transformed? Did you have a temporary mission? Um, what are the lingering impacts and how do you deal with safety? And I think, Phil, you were going to talk about this last point here.
Yeah. About the masking part too.
Yeah, about
Yeah.
balancing in person, out of person.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think to me, that was one of the biggest effects is before the pandemic, I think there was hardly any congregation that was doing any sort of mixture of in-person and online, uh, meetings or anything like that. And now I think all of the congregations I've been visiting um, are doing some sort of online component, doing blended in-person and online things, and just wanted to talk a little bit of how to do that, especially around, uh, like I was saying, if you're going to do some of those circle groups, can you do a blended sort of circle group? And I think it's possible, but some of the advice I've seen is you kind of need three hosts, because there's three things to be tracking, somebody to be a host for the people in the room, somebody to be a host for the people who are online, and then somebody who's just watching to make sure that the interactions are working. Um, and I just saw some really good suggestions too. If you had, say, let's just call it 50-50, if you had 12 people meeting and six of them were online, six of them were virtual, we all have our phones and devices now where you could actually pop on the virtual meeting, and you could do some breakout rooms with everybody virtually, including the people who are there, by using their devices, things like that. So um, I think there's a lot of possibilities for this, and I do think it's worth doing the blended ones, um, because it kind of evens out the participation. If you do let's say you're doing the mission, vision, values work, and you're doing conversations. If you have like all face-to-face conversations, and then we have these online ones, it may feel like the online ones are not as important. But if you have face-to-face ones, solely online ones, but also the blended ones, I think it gives people a wider variety of how they can participate. So I think the key is to be intentional about it, and there are some resources available, that Lisa, do you send resources out that I could maybe?
We could do that, or we can put them in the portal. So if you send me the links, I'll just
Oh
put
yeah,
them in
okay,
the
I'll do
portal
that. I'll do that. Yeah,
in,
well, put
in
them in
the
the portal.
UU
Yeah,
Institute site.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a couple of resources. One was just how to build sacred space online, which I think could apply to doing just about anything in a congregation. Like how Lisa has done with us with our opening. She had some music, stuff like that. Um, the readings, and then I've got another one on how to do that kind of blended space too. So I'll share those.
Great. We'll put those in the portal. Yay!
All right.
It always makes me feel so, like science fiction-y to talk about
That's right.
portals. Okay, and then one of the things we also talk about each time is the impact of white supremacy culture. And so one of the things, and now that you've had a chance to talk about your mission, part of this could be looking at who is impacted by your mission, positively or negatively. Um, what systems and structures are supported by your mission? Will you need, as a congregation, to look toward how are you actually organized legally and structurally? Um, and just sort of to come back always when we're talking about things to who is it who's included and who is not included. That's always a big thing. So, I love this. Barb says we always have roomers and zoomers each Sunday worship. At first the zoomers were second class citizens. Now with sensitivity they're included as equals. That's lovely. um,
Yeah.
so when you're looking at your missions as a congregation or as a leader, that's the kind of thing that we ask you to look at is who are there people who are intentionally unincluded? And is that okay? Sometimes it might be. Um, and so one of the things that or what we're going to do now is put you back in those same small groups with the same people. And again, we'll have about 20 minutes in that group. So part of the way to get at that question of who is here and who is not here you know, who would notice if you cease to exist? So, are there intentional things that you could do or could not do? And then if you wish, I'm not sure how alive this still is for people. How has the pandemic changed your mission and whether you are seen? So I'm putting those in the chat, and I'm going to now um, put people back in their rooms, and we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to open them. You'll have about 20 minutes in them, and then we'll see you back. So welcome back, people. We have a bit of time. I wonder if anybody wants to speak out loud about uh, sort of any ahas or surprises or what you discovered. You could raise your hand through the raise hand function, which should be either on the bottom of the Zoom window or it might be under the more three dot button. And then you can unmute and just say, so what what touched you? All right, Sarah, you found the button. Good for
I'm a
you.
I'm a talker. I'm one of those people. If we were in person, I'd be like,
Perfect.
um,
Thank you.
um, I was forced to describe our shadow mission in constructive, positive terms, which was really wonderful. So we have had over the last couple of years some like internal conflicts, like a member who gets really upset about something and so on. And so our shadow mission, something which was really helpful, Lisa, when you described that as something that's taking a lot of your time that maybe isn't in your plan. So that really helped me figure out what it was. So we have spent a lot of time in the past couple of years, like responding to these kinds of upsets and really learning, leaning into our covenant of right relations, which of course means lots of meetings and lots of conversations and efforts to understand each other. And when I was saying all that, I'm like, well, that's really good, but the other part of my mind is like, it's been such a hassle. It's such a negative thing. Why but it's actually been really good because it's really supported our staff and our minister and our board in really understanding that covenantal aspect of being a UU and really leaning into that and relying on that to respond to those kinds of situations. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I don't know if Allison, you want to unmute and talk about this, or if I should just read your comment out loud. Oh, can you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Sometimes I whisper when I talk. Um, I just I love our mission, and I know there are a lot of people who love our mission. The last part of our mission is we are a people who show up. And a lot of people in our congregation interpret this to mean in person, physically. And this has been a narrative that has been growing throughout the pandemic. Why aren't people coming back into the building? Why don't we see people physically anymore? And it feels, I don't know, maybe weaponizing isn't the right word, but it feels like a thing that people are starting to use as a way to figure out who is in the in group, who is in the out group. And what we were talking about in my group is that this is not something that there are many, many reasons why somebody may not attend in person. that have nothing to do with a public health crisis. And the pandemic shed light on how inaccessible in person can be. But it isn't the only reason that in person is inaccessible.
Thank you. Wow, that's a great realization. Shelley, please.
I have a hard time typing, so thank you for bringing that up, Allison. I'm a past AMIN administrator through the UUA, which means that I was working on accessibility and inclusion. And one thing when churches started going back in person, it highlighted how many people were kind of equalized when the pandemic hit. A lot of people could partake in meetings and committees, and when everybody started going back in person and the in-person was celebrated so much, it made it even more difficult. And that is not something I think a lot of places have reconciled that.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you. Ashley and then Kathy, and then we're going to have to wrap up, I think, because of time. So Ashley.
I was just gonna say that I'm really glad that we kind of lifted this up because we were so very proud of ourselves during the pandemic for pushing forward with that technology from a small congregation of mostly older people who, you know, that was hard for them, and we did it. And now I live an hour away, so from time to time I will Zoom in on Sunday mornings, and I kind of see how we've gotten so used to it, and so that the Zoom folks are kind of ignored, and it's very easy to feel like I'm just watching a recording, and we've stayed on Zoom on purpose. We didn't go to YouTube. We want that interaction, but the Zoom people are kind of overlooked. And I'm glad that we talked about this because I'm going to highlight it again for my congregation.
Thank you. And there are so many ways that, you could have readings done by people who are online, and all that, I mean, there's so many different things. Thank you. All right, Kathy.
So I was struck by the variety in our small group from very small and nothing else close by to ours is 400 with 3 other congregations within, 45 minutes. And the needs are different, but there's also a lot of things we can share with each other. Like, well, could you try this? You could try that. Or like, oh, I like that idea. Let me take that back to my church. So I think the idea of sharing with other people whose experience is different than yours is one of the great values of doing this.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. All right. So I want to let you know what's happening in 2 weeks. We will be talking about congregational systems and how family systems theory deals with this. The session 3 should be open for you to go in and look at the materials and work on that. And there's also a case study, and the case study is going to be a key part of session 3 conversation, and I believe also session 4. So make sure you've checked it out, you've read it over, and do that kind of thing. Don't forget that you can post comments in that platform in UU Institute. I love that people did put up some of their mission statements there. We'd love to, do that. Just to it allows us to perhaps interact more between sessions too. Um, Last time I said if anybody was willing to have their name and contact information shared to drop me an email, I got from about 5 or 6 people, and I don't know if that's just because people forgot or if that's it. But there's my email address again. It's lpresley@uua.org. If you haven't, if you'd be willing to share your contact info, and I'm hoping to get that out to you all once I hear from more people. With that, I really want to thank Phil for coming along for the ride today. It's been great to have you here again, Phil, and to work together. Next week, the next 2 weeks, Sharon Dittmar, our colleague, will be with us talking about systems. And next week, and then the last session, Sharon and I will be talking about conflict. We'll try not to have one for you, but we'll, that was a joke. All right. So I want to return you to the rest of your Saturday. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. It's great to have you. Take care. I want, is Susan holding a little baby there or a fluffy dog or it's hard to
No,
know.
sure.
All right. Phil, again,
Okay.
thanks. See
Yeah,
you
thank you.
at
Good
on a
to,
Zoom meeting near you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
asking me to
Yeah.
help out.
Oh,
I
I
enjoyed it.
appreciate it so much. It's fun.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.